The blizzard had come without warning. Adam had been inside his small, isolated hut in the woods when the winds began to howl. They started as a gentle breeze, but within minutes, the temperature dropped rapidly. Snowflakes filled the air, swirling in every direction, and the wind turned into a wild force that pounded against the walls of his cabin. The fire in the hearth flickered and crackled, barely keeping the chill at bay. Adam had spent the evening preparing for the storm. He'd chopped enough wood to last through the night, boiled some tea, and made sure the small kettle was ready for any food he might need. Living alone in the wilds of the north wasn't easy, but Adam had become used to the silence. It was comforting in its own way. His thoughts were his own, and the only sounds he had to listen to were the wind, the crackling fire, and the occasional creak of the wooden beams in his hut. It was well past midnight when the first knock came. At first, Adam thought he had imagined it. The wind was howling so loudly that it could have easily drowned out any noise from outside. But then the knock came again, louder this time and followed by a thud. Someone was at the door. Adam rose from his chair, confused and a little wary. He wasn't expecting anyone. He stepped carefully to the door, listening for any more sounds. The wind raged outside, and the snow whipped against the windows, but the door was still. No one had ever come here in the middle of a blizzard before, and Adam didn't know who could possibly be out there. He reached for the door handle and opened it cautiously. A woman collapsed inside. She was soaked through, her clothes clinging to her thin frame, her face pale and cold. Her skin was strange, shimmering faintly, almost like she had been covered in fine dust. Her hair, silver as moonlight, hung in wet strands around her face. But it was her eyes that caught Adam's attention first. They glowed with a faint violet hue, like stars in the night sky. Her breathing was heavy, her chest rising and falling rapidly as though she had been running. Before Adam could react, she was on the floor, trembling violently. He rushed to her side without thinking, but as he knelt down, she recoiled, her hands up in defense. Her eyes locked onto him with an expression of terror, and she scrambled back as far as she could. It was as though she had seen a ghost. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe now," Adam said softly, his voice a calm whisper in the raging storm. "You're going to be all right." But the woman only stared at him, her face full of fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she grabbed the edge of a nearby chair and pulled herself up to stand. She swayed a little but then bolted toward the far corner of the room, still keeping her eyes on him. Her body was rigid, as though she was ready to flee at any moment. Adam stood up slowly, unsure of what to do. He had no idea who this woman was or where she had come from, but it was clear that something had frightened her terribly, something beyond the blizzard. "I'm not going to hurt you," Adam said again, taking a cautious step closer. He could see that she was still shivering, and her clothes were barely enough to protect her from the storm outside. It was obvious that she needed help, but she was terrified of him, like he was the one responsible for whatever had made her run. She glanced at him one more time, her violet eyes wide with fear, and then she turned back to the corner of the room as though trying to make herself invisible. Adam felt a pang of sympathy for her, but he was also confused. Who was she? Why had she come here in the middle of such a storm? "I won't hurt you," Adam repeated. He knew he had to get through to her somehow, but her fear was almost palpable. It wasn't just the cold she was afraid of. She was afraid of him. And that frightened Adam even more. The woman's presence was strange, like a dream that refused to fade away. Adam couldn't stop watching her, even though she kept her distance. Every time he moved too close, she flinched, her violet eyes widening with panic. It was clear that she had no intention of trusting him, even though he had tried to offer her safety and warmth. The fire crackled in the hearth, and Adam moved back to his chair, sitting down, trying to give her space. He didn't want to scare her any more than she already was. For some reason, the woman had been running from something, and it seemed like whatever it was had left a deep mark on her. Adam had seen fear before, but this was something else, something primal, a fear that went beyond just the storm outside. She had stopped trembling for the most part, but her eyes never left him, not even for a moment. Adam could feel the weight of her gaze, and the silence between them stretched on for what felt like forever. The snowstorm raged outside, the wind howling like a wild animal, but inside the hut, there was only the crackle of the fire and the soft rustling of her movements. It took a while, but eventually she spoke. Her voice was quiet, barely a whisper, but Adam heard the desperation in her words. Don't come any closer." Adam blinked, surprised that she was speaking at all. He had half expected her to remain silent, lost in her fear. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said again, his voice gentle but firm. "You're safe here. Please just tell me what happened. Why are you so afraid?" The woman's eyes flickered with emotion, but she didn't speak. Instead, she glanced at the door, her face tightening as though she expected something to burst through at any moment. Adam followed her gaze, but the door remained still, undisturbed by the storm outside. Whatever had happened to her, it had clearly left her feeling vulnerable, like the world outside was a constant threat. She looked at him again, her eyes filled with something that resembled both fear and sorrow. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, but the words didn't come. Adam could see that she was struggling with something inside, something she was afraid to share. Taking a deep breath, Adam decided to try a different approach. "You're safe here for now," he said softly, "and you don't have to talk if you don't want to, but I can't help you if I don't know what's going on." Her eyes met his, and for a moment the terror seemed to lessen just a little. She looked exhausted, her body sagging with the weight of whatever she had been through. After a long pause, she spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I'm not from here," she said, her words slow and deliberate, like she was choosing them carefully. I don't know where I am." Adam frowned, confused. "What do you mean you're not from here?" The woman's gaze dropped to the floor and she seemed to shrink in on herself. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around her body, as if trying to protect herself from an invisible threat. Adam could see the fear still gripping her, and it made him want to know more, to understand why she was so scared. "I'm lost," she whispered. I don't know how I got here. I was running from them." Adam's curiosity piqued, but he didn't want to push her too hard. He could see that talking about it was difficult for her. He leaned back in his chair, giving her the space she seemed to need. "Who were you running from?" he asked gently. For a moment the woman remained silent, her eyes flicking toward the window as if she expected someone, or something, to be watching her. She seemed to be deep in thought, her gaze distant and unfocused. When she spoke again, her voice was strained. "They are after me," she said, her words tight with emotion. "They want me. They've been chasing me for, I don't know how long. I thought I could get away, but I don't know how much longer I can run." Adam felt a shiver run down his spine. Something about her words sent a chill through him, deeper than the cold air outside. "Who are they?" he asked, though he wasn't sure if he was ready for the answer. She shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I can't tell you," she whispered, almost to herself. "It's too dangerous." Adam could see that whatever she had gone through was far more than just a flight from a storm. The terror in her eyes told him that she had been through something unimaginable, something that was chasing her even now. He stood up, feeling a strange urgency rising within him. He had to do something to help her to understand what was going on. But how could he protect her from something that terrified her so deeply? He was just one man, and she was something different. She wasn't like anyone Adam had ever met before. The woman's voice broke through his thoughts. "Please, just let me rest. I can't." "Think straight." Adam nodded, his mind racing. She needed rest, and for now that was the best he could offer. He moved toward the small bed in the corner of the room, pulling the heavy blanket back. "You can sleep here," he said gently. "It's not much, but it's warm. And you're safe for now." The woman looked at him, her face still full of fear, but there was a glimmer of something else in her eyes, thankfulness, perhaps, or just the relief of being out of the storm. She nodded slowly, her hands trembling as she moved toward the bed. Adam watched her for a moment before turning away, giving her the privacy she needed. He could feel the weight of her fear pressing down on him, and it troubled him more than he liked to admit. Whatever had happened to her, it wasn't just the blizzard she was running from. There was something more, something much darker. As the woman finally lay down, Adam moved toward the door. He needed to check the storm outside to see if it was still raging. But as he opened the door, the wind howled louder, and the snow seemed to come in thicker. It was as though the world outside had swallowed him whole. Adam stepped back into the room and closed the door behind him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something more than the storm. Something was coming. The storm outside seemed to grow louder as the night dragged on, its howling winds never relenting. Adam sat by the fire, occasionally glancing toward the bed where the woman, Lyra, he now thought of her as, lay under the thick blanket. Her silver hair spread across the pillow like strands of moonlight, her pale skin almost glowing in the dim light of the cabin. She had fallen into an uneasy sleep, though the occasional shudder and soft gasps told Adam that she was not at peace. The nightmare of whatever had happened to her still gripped her even in rest. Adam couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sympathy for her, mixed with growing curiosity. Her words, though few, echoed in his mind. "They are after me. They want me," she had spoken in fragments, unable to fully explain the danger she was running from. Her eyes had been wide with fear, a fear that ran deeper than the storm outside, a fear that Adam could sense was tied to something far more terrifying than just a simple chase. What could have happened to her to make her so terrified? Who were they? And why was she so sure they were still hunting her? Adam stood up slowly, deciding he couldn't just sit by the fire and wait for answers. He had to learn more. He needed to understand what had happened to her, but he also knew he had to tread carefully. She was already afraid of him, and he didn't want to push her too hard. He walked over to the window, his breath fogging the cold glass as he peered out at the endless white. The blizzard still raged, and the snowstorm seemed as relentless as the terror that haunted her. For a moment he just stared out, trying to clear his mind, but his thoughts kept circling back to her. Her strange appearance, her glowing eyes, and her odd way of speaking. She wasn't from around here. Adam had never seen anyone like her before. He had lived in these woods for years, surrounded by nothing but the wilderness and his thoughts, but never had he encountered anything like this. The closest thing to company he had were the occasional travelers passing through, but none of them had been like her. Turning away from the window, Adam walked back toward the bed, kneeling down beside her. She was still asleep, but now her breathing was calmer, her body no longer trembling. Adam studied her face, noting the delicate features and the faint, glowing marks on her skin. They looked like tattoos, intricate designs that seemed to shimmer and pulse softly in the dim light of the cabin. He couldn't help but wonder if those markings were significant, if they were somehow connected to the strange fear she carried with her. He reached out, his hand hovering just above her arm. He didn't want to wake her, but he couldn't stop himself from wanting to understand more. The temptation to ask her about the tattoos, about the symbols on her skin, was overwhelming. But before he could touch her, her eyes snapped open, locking onto his with sudden intensity. Her body tensed, and she shot up into a sitting position, the blanket falling away from her shoulders. Adam froze, his heart racing. She was wide awake, and the terror in her eyes was palpable. It was as though she had been waiting for something or someone. "Don't," she whispered hoarsely, her voice trembling. "Don't touch me." Adam immediately took a step back, raising his hands in the air, trying to show that he meant no harm. "I wasn't trying to. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." She shook her head, her silver hair wild around her face. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't trust anyone, not even you." Adam's chest tightened at her words. It was clear that whatever had happened to her had broken her sense of trust in everyone, even in someone trying to help. "I'm not them," Adam said quietly, his voice soft. "I'm not like whoever you're running from. You're safe here. You don't have to be afraid." She looked at him for a long moment, and for the briefest second, Adam saw something in her eyes, a flicker of doubt. She didn't speak, but her gaze softened just a little. "I'm not from here," she said again, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm from far away, and I've been running for so long, you don't understand how dangerous they are." Adam sat down on the edge of the bed, maintaining a careful distance between them. "Then tell me," he urged gently. "Tell me who they are. I can't help you if I don't know what's going on." For a long moment, she didn't respond. Her eyes drifted away, staring out the window as though she could see beyond the storm. Adam could feel the weight of her silence, and though he wanted to push for answers, he held back, letting her take her time. "They're not from here," she finally spoke, her voice steady but tinged with fear. "They're not like you, they come from the stars." Adam felt a chill run through him, though he wasn't sure if it was from the cold or from the way she spoke. "The stars." She nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing slightly as though remembering something painful. "They're a race from another world. They are not human. They are hunters, and I am their prey. I've been running from them for so long, but they never stop chasing." Adam felt a shiver crawl down his spine. He had heard of strange things, but he had never expected something like this. "What do they want with you?" Lyra looked down, her hands trembling. "They want me because of who I am, because of what I am. I'm one of the last of my kind, and they want to destroy us. My people, my family, they were wiped out by them. I'm the only one left." Her voice cracked with emotion, and Adam could see the pain in her eyes. The tears that had been threatening to fall finally slipped down her cheeks, and she wiped them away quickly, as though ashamed of showing such weakness. "I was sent away to survive," she continued. "I was supposed to escape to warn others, but I didn't make it in time. They found me, and now I'm here, and they're still hunting me. They'll never stop until they get what they want." Adam was speechless. He had known there was something more to her story, something far darker than he had imagined, but this was beyond anything he had anticipated. The fear in her eyes was real. Whatever these hunters were, they were relentless, and they would stop at nothing to find her. "I can't stay here," she whispered, her voice trembling with desperation. "They'll come for me. I can't hide forever." Adam stood up, moving toward the door. He had to make a choice. He couldn't just send her out into the storm again, not like this. And he couldn't let her face whatever dangers were out there alone. "You don't have to face this alone," Adam said firmly. "I don't know what these hunters are, but I'll help you. I'll protect you." Lyra's eyes flickered with a mixture of doubt and something else, hope maybe. But she said nothing. She only nodded, her face still full of fear, but also a slight relief that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. But Adam knew that whatever came next, things had just become far more complicated than he ever imagined. The storm outside had begun to lose its strength, but the silence inside the hut was deafening. Adam sat near the fire, watching the woman, Lyra, as she sat on the bed, her silver hair tangled and her eyes distant. The weight of her words still hung heavy in the air, and Adam could feel the chill in the room despite the warmth from the fire. She had revealed so much about herself, but there was still so much left unspoken. Her words echoed in his mind. "They want me because of who I am, because of what I am." For a moment, Adam felt a strange sense of unease. He had never believed in things like alien hunters or interstellar enemies, but everything Lyra had said sounded so real. And the terror in her eyes had been enough to convince him that whatever had happened to her was no mere figment of imagination. He had always lived a quiet, isolated life in the woods, but now, in the presence of Lyra, everything he knew seemed to be changing. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. The storm had stopped, but the world outside still felt harsh and unforgiving. He turned back to the room where Lyra remained, sitting silently with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She hadn't said anything for a while, lost in her own thoughts. He could see the strain in her eyes, the weight of the fear that still gripped her heart. Adam approached her slowly, careful not to startle her. He had noticed that she seemed to flinch whenever anyone came too close, even him, and he knew that her past had scarred her in ways that words couldn't describe. But he couldn't just sit back and do nothing. He had made a promise to protect her, and he intended to keep it. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly, sitting down beside her. "I'm not going anywhere. You're safe here." She didn't respond at first, but after a moment she looked at him, her violet eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and doubt. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You don't know what they're capable of. They will stop at nothing to find me." Adam didn't know what to say. The situation felt too big for him to handle, but the determination in his chest told him that he couldn't turn back now. He had to help her. She had no one else, and the more he thought about it, the more he realized that she had already been through enough. "What can we do?" Adam asked, his voice steady. "How can I help you? You said they would never stop, but we can't just hide forever." Lyra looked away, her expression filled with uncertainty. She was clearly conflicted, torn between trusting him and pushing him away. But she didn't speak right away. Instead, she seemed to weigh her options as though searching for the right words. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "There's a place," she said slowly. "A safe place hidden away. It's not far from here, but it's protected. I thought I could make it there on my own, but now I'm not sure." Adam frowned, feeling a rush of hope mixed with skepticism. A safe place, hidden away. If there was such a place, why hadn't she gone there already? Why had she ended up in his hut instead? "You think it's safe?" he asked, his voice uncertain. "How do you know they won't find it?" Lyra shook her head, her face grim. "It's hidden, but even if it's hidden, they can still track me. They have the technology to find anyone, anywhere. No place is truly safe from them, but it's my only chance." Adam didn't know what to think. The more she spoke about these hunters, the more impossible it seemed to keep her safe. How could they evade enemies that could track them across the stars? But something in her eyes, something in the way she spoke, told him that she believed in this place, that it was their best hope. "If it's our only chance, then we have to try," Adam said firmly. "I'll help you. We'll go together. We'll make it." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly, though her face was still full of fear. "We leave at first light," she said quietly. "I can't stay here for long, they're already close." Adam's heart raced at the thought of leaving the safety of the cabin, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Lyra was right. The hunters were coming for her, and the longer they stayed in one place, the more danger they would be in. He couldn't let that happen. He stood up and began gathering what little gear he had. A small pack, a blanket, and some provisions for the journey. He had lived off the land for years, so he knew how to prepare for the cold, but this was different. This wasn't just a storm to ride out. This was a journey into the unknown, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. As he packed, Lyra stood up and walked toward the window, her eyes scanning the landscape outside. Her face was set in determination, but there was a trace of fear in her expression. Adam could see that she was still haunted by the thought of the hunters, the fear of being found, of being caught. But she wasn't alone anymore. He walked over to her and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. She looked at him, her violet eyes filled with gratitude. "Don't worry," Adam said softly. "We'll make it, together." She nodded, though her eyes betrayed the uncertainty that still lingered in her mind. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to do this. You could leave, go back to your life." Adam shook his head, his expression firm. "I'm not leaving you. I made a promise." They didn't speak again as they prepared for the journey. There was no need for words. The storm had passed, but a different kind of storm was on the horizon, one that neither of them could avoid. Adam didn't know what they would face ahead, but he was ready to face it with her, no matter what. As they finished preparing, they stepped outside into the still, cold air. The snow had stopped falling, but the world was still blanketed in a thick layer of white. The tracks of the storm were all around them, but there was a strange sense of calm that settled over Adam. They would leave the safety of the hut, and they would move forward, one step at a time. Lyra glanced at him one last time before they began their journey. "Stay close," she said quietly. "I don't know what's out there, but I know they'll come for us. They'll never stop." Adam nodded, and they set off into the snowy wilderness, heading toward the unknown.